got like 45 minutes, so I got to leave to that next one. So,
All right, cool. Yeah,
I mean,
we'll get it. We'll see how this flows. I'll definitely get you out before then. So, man, you got a big fight coming up. Have you been to Australia before?
I've never been. I'm super stoked. I've always wanted to go.
Yeah, and I mean, you're a young dude too. Have you ever been on a plane for longer than 10 hours?
Yeah. I've been to Russia a couple times to corner my buddy Tyson Nam. I
Mm,
went on a Armed Forces Entertainment tour to Kuwait. That was
okay.
pretty fun. And then I've been to Bahrain as well to corner. So I've had a little bit of experience with long plane trips.
All right, cool, man. Yeah, that I remember the first time I flew from. I moved here about 5 years ago, but I'm originally from the States, and from LA to Sydney, it's four. I think it's 14 hours. And dude, that thing is that thing is brutal. But you do it more and more, and like you said, you've done that before. You could get used to it in a bit.
Yeah, I hate it though. It's rough. I say it's rough. I'm gonna be all skinny when I'm doing it this time, so it's gonna be tough, but it's gonna be worth it.
Yeah. How many days in advance are you going to come down before the ninth?
I'm shooting for like 7 days, I think.
Okay, and you're going to go
Yeah,
straight to Melbourne.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. And then I already did the introduction, man. The way I do the podcast, because we're already on. I talked about you being a former champion and the LFA legacy, and then your fight win streak, and your youth as well, man. I just got off the phone with a guy who's been in the fight game for 15 years, and the contrast with you, talk about. Are you just one of these guys willing whenever you get the call you want to fight? Did you even have a? I mean, you didn't even have a full camp for this, considering your last matchup got canceled.
Yeah, something that I've always kept in mind is just to stay ready. That's something that I put in my head early by coaches, especially because we got to a point where we couldn't get fights on the regional
9 of them,
circuits.
right?
Yeah, so we had to stay ready constantly to get hopefully wait to get the call. So I feel like I'm always ready, and so even with like you said, this fight, I didn't feel like it was too short notice because 5 weeks for me is plenty.
Yeah, one of the fights when I messaged you, the Camus fight, after you beat him in the LFA and became the champ. One of the sports writers, wrote that you had snuck in a machete into the octagon with you because all the damage that you had done in the blood. Your mindset when you're going into one of these fights, man, is it combat? Is it war? Is it personal development? Are you just trying to get better? Are you trying to hurt the guy? What's going through your head?
Um, I don't know. I mean I just feel super focused every time I go in there to fight, but I definitely feel like a mentality change. Like there's definitely a shift from when I'm about to walk out there, and then once I get in, like I just feel super focused, and I just I don't know. I know there's it's a sport at the same time, but I get to be like a little crazy, and I enjoy that.
Yeah, one of my background in school was psychology, and I like reading a lot of. There's a writer. Have you heard of Robert Greene?
I have not.
He writes about power and manipulation, but one of his books is called 48 Laws, and he did his another one he did with 50 Cent called the 50th Law. But in these books, he highlights nonverbal communication and how to identify these things to use as kind of like benefits in our lives. Like if you want to get a job, you go into that job interview and you act like you've already had it. If you want your first date to go well, certain things like that. Watching you, so when I watch the fighters and I watch the fights, I'm a coach down here. I've been watching the UFC since '93. I'm 36. Watching you in your first fight, you're 2-0 in the UFC. You look really comfortable in there. You look like a guy that it knows exactly where he's supposed to be and what he's supposed to do. The big lights didn't seem to frazzle you that much. Do you work on? Is this something that is like a self belief in you, or is this something that just happens, like you said, when that door closes and the lights are on?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big part of it of being able to just like focus and kind of like really like try to like shine in the moment, not try to because a lot of people get a little like you said they get a little shaken up, especially under bigger lights. So I don't know. That's something I think I even though I've had 15 pro fights now, I also had 11 amateur fights. So maybe it's just that I've made the walk quite a few times now. So I am young, but I have had a good amount of fights under my belt. So I feel experienced, even though I'm a prospect in the UFC. I fought for world title for Titan. I won the world title for LFA. You know, now I finally feel like I'm where I belong.
Yeah, that's a very important, like having that sort of like comfort level. There was a guy that you hear all the time. You know, one of my old roommates, she fights in the UFC, and you always hear stories of guys or girls who like kill the game in training. You know, they're gym champions. When they roll, they submit everybody, and then when the lights go on, they kind of freeze a bit. Is there anything sort of, could you train for this? Like, is this something that, I know the fight game is constantly evolving. You're seeing some guys having mental coaches or sort of, you know, breathwork coaches. You know, there's a guy named Brian McKenzie who works with like calming your parasympathetic nervous system. Do you feel as a fighter you know, not even in your prime yet, that could be taught? Or do you think that sort of being up for the big show is something that has to already be in you?
I think I mean I've heard of guys using or athletes using like you know someone to help them with their mentality, right? You know, a psych coach or something, and it looked like it helped them. But I think for like a lot of people, or for me, I feel I have something I've always kind of had.
Mm.
But I do feel like it's something you can definitely build upon.
Yeah,
Could,
I love what you said. You put up an Instagram post after your live. It was kind of like a reflection of 2018, and you talked about your career. You'd won the title there. You got signed with the UFC. You won 2 fights. But I like what you said at the end about how you were able to provide for your family with like a holiday, and it kind of shows your fans, and it shows people who cheer for the sport and cheer for you where your intentions are, why you do what you do. So that being said, why do you fight?
you know, I ask myself that all the time, but it's because it's definitely it's a crazy job to have. There's so many you hear all the time. The highs are high, the lows are low, but it's just something I love to do. I love to compete. I grew up doing all different kinds of sports, but especially wrestling. And then once my wrestling career kind of stopped, I wanted to keep competing somehow. And then I didn't even about fighting really. I thought I was doing it as a hobby at first, and all of a sudden I'm 11-0 as an amateur, you know, going pro, and I'm like, oh man, this might be it. I turn into a job.
Mm.
But I think honestly, it's just something that I've always done. I grew up with 3 brothers. We fought all the time. We watched Pride with my dad growing up. We watched UFC. My parents bought. I have a older brother. He's 17 months older than me, and they bought us boxing gloves when we were super young. And they're like, "All right, if you guys have problems, you guys figure it out, but don't come to us crying." I remember them telling us that. So I feel like we're kind of. Even though like I like to pretend that, oh, I don't know how I ended up doing this, but I kind of feel like my entire life I was kind of molded. You know, I've been fighting my entire life, so it's kind of been molded towards this direction.
Yeah, it makes sense, man. Like I said earlier, you look comfortable in there. You look like you're having fun, and you know everything from the presentation. You feed off of the crowd. You give the crowd, you know, in your 2 wins, you give them something back, which I wish more fighters would do. I understand the humility side of things, and I don't mean calling guys out or being kind of you know, a dick in there, but like being a showman. And I think that's part. As you know, you already got the comfort level in there. You're winning fights. You got a big opportunity, man. I was in Melbourne for 193 when Holly knocked out Ronda. It was one of the largest live events. You're fighting at the Rod Laver Arena, correct?
Yeah.
Dude, the Aussie fan, it's gonna be crazy in there. And I think a guy like yourself who's able to harness that and channel that, you'll be able to use that for your you know, for your strength. Now, a guy like Rani Yahya, it always intrigues me. You know, that you mentioned the pride, and you know there used to be like specialists, and then as the sport evolved, Matt Hughes was one of these first ones to take the wrestling, the grappling, and then the ground and pound, the striking, and put other things together and blend them. But a guy like Yahya, when you know what he's going to try to do, when you know he's a specialist, is this going to affect you in any way on trying to go after your own game? Like, are you one of these fighters that will fight to your opponent, or are you just going to go in there and do what you always do?
No, I feel like at this level, you have to game plan, and you have to be ready. I can't just go in there and do what I love to do, which is pick people up and slam them, and because Ronnie's so good at grabbing subs from any position, any limb, right? So no,
Again, it's my boy, man, Luke.
Yeah, dude, he's a phenomenal grappler. I've been watching him fight forever, so it's crazy to me that I get to go in there and fight him and take his number 15 spot. So, I'm definitely gonna stick to a game plan and do what I do best, which is dictate where the fight goes.
That's nice, man. So with your first victory in the UFC, it was a finish, and then you fought an undefeated guy who just won another fight in Montel Jackson, and you won that decision. You seemed after the fight though kind of upset that you didn't finish.
Yeah. I like
And
like
that
you were
kid was
saying.
undefeated. Like Jackson's a tough out.
Yeah, no, he was definitely tough, but I feel like there were positions where I get people in and they usually don't get out of, and he just had like I mounted him right, I took his back, I had double leg rides in, I flattened him out. Like usually people don't. If I get someone there, I can finish and I want to finish fights. So it was a little frustrating to me, but that kid was a lot to deal with, and as you see, he came back, finished Brian Kelleher within a minute. So both my opponents in the UFC so far have come back and dominated their opponents. So I mean, yeah, I mean it goes to show like I'm right there with the elite.
Yeah, definitely, man. What did you learn from that Alexander Dos Santos fight?
That I always say I felt so good in that fight. I felt great up until obviously the point where I got dropped and then choked. So, um, it just taught me not to put so much pressure on myself. Honestly, like before every fight, I feel a little loose, and I know I'm gonna go out there and perform to the best of my ability, and I'm excited to do that.
Yeah, is it when you're able to? How much time did you take from that loss? Like, I know that people want to get that taste out of their mouth. Maybe talk about the habits, your own lifestyle habits. And you're still 20. I don't want to keep saying that you're young because age is only an age, but that was a few
I
years
feel
back. It's your only loss. Do you remember the days after? Did you get right back in the gym? Did you try to fix what you felt went wrong?
Yeah, I definitely went like definitely, a little crazy. Like, felt it was my first loss ever. I was like I said, I was undefeated as an amateur, and at that point, I was 7-0 as a pro. You know, so yeah, I remember I was definitely down on myself. I feel like I'm, even after a win, like you said, I didn't feel happy after the Montel fight. That's just how I am. I don't ever feel, too happy with myself, no matter what the performance is like. But after a loss, I definitely was hard on myself for a few days, and it took a few coaches, messaging me like, just relax. You're gonna be all right. I was right back in the gym, and it even made it tougher that I couldn't get a fight like for a whole year. But once we got back to it, we had the recipe and it ended up working out.
I was talking to a Muay Thai fighter, and he was going over with me a process before he gets called out to the ring, to the octagon. He's in the locker room, his team's around him, and he was talking about that he does this visualization technique that he like grounds himself. He visualizes that he's part of the arena itself, and that the roots are growing through his feet. And so when he gets to the octagon, the bottoms of his feet are already in that on that floor. There's no way that he's going to lose because he's using everything around him to throw every point. It was just a fascinating and eye-opening kind of concept for me to hear. So do you do any sort of kind of mental creativity visualization techniques right before you fight?
Yeah, I mean, something I always do is I always do like a dominant pose. I've always done that before a fight, so I always like sit in the locker room with my hands up, and I'm just visualizing the win. I'll do something like that for like 2 or 3 minutes. I'll just keep my hands up, and I've always done that when I was an amateur, when I was a pro. I think it's because I took it was a class in college. It was a psychology class in college I took, and they were just talking about like I don't remember what the entire class was about or but it was like fake it till you make it basically, and
Mm-hmm.
it's staying in dominant poses before you do take a test or before you compete or something like that seemed to help. So I mean I started doing it and I've always done it.
Yeah, no, it's that falls in the line of like, yeah, the nonverbal communication, also fight or flight. Our bodies have your sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. It's when they say like if you're in the wild, a bear, don't run, because if you run, you automatically become the prey. The predator will just stand there, and the hunter will just stand there and survey. Have you ever heard Teddy Atlas was recently giving an interview, and he was talking about that a fighter, you don't know anything about a fighter until the fighter's tested. And he went on to talk about, the Mike Tyson, drama. He found Mike as a young guy, and, they had a falling out. But in his eyes, he said that Mike never won a fight. He said he was 0-4 because all the fights that he had won, he was the bully. The fights that he had adversity where he was popped in the mouth, he either didn't get up back off the stool or he looked for a way out. And the reason for this question is that he said that what Mike, the only thing Tyson had, you're familiar? I mean, you're with Tyson and Holyfield and all that. He was saying what Tyson had was he was able to see in his opponent what he didn't have, referencing the Holyfield fight. Like he saw in Holyfield's eyes that Holyfield had that sort of gumption, that upbringing, that he wasn't going to shy away from that adversity. He was going to stay there. Have you ever do you ever see it in your opponents? Like the moment when they break, are you looking for it? Is that something that like you're able to identify and jump on?
That's my favorite feeling. I feel like I can feel it. You can feel your opponent break, and I look for it in video too. I try to see it from some of their previous fights if they're the type of fighter who does break. But no, I think I felt that early from like in wrestling. It'd be a close match, and then you get like a takedown with like 20 seconds to go. You take them down right, and then they're all of a sudden they're down, and they don't have the fight to get back up anymore. You kind of feel them kind of give, and I feel the same thing in fights. Sometimes you're on top of them, punching them, and they're not making the right movements, or you look at them, and before the next round starts, and you kind of see like, oh, they don't really want to go back out there. So I feel like I definitely, and I feed off that too. If you show me you're gonna break, that's when I'm gonna start pushing even more.
You're gonna hunt for it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that, man, I always hear like that wrestling background, man, since you guys were kids, like you're used to the grind, you're used to cutting, you're used to being uncomfortable. When you have a guy like Yahya, he doesn't look physically imposing. I don't even know if he looks like an athlete. I mean, I'm a fan of him. He's a legend. Like he's one of the best grapplers in MMA. Does that ever, what I'm trying to say is, that physical, are you past the point of either intimidation or even trying to intimidate people? Is it, some guys like the stare downs and trying to get into their opponent's head. When you have a guy like Yahya, who's probably going to give you a hug, he's a very nice dude. He's probably, where's your head at with that sort of side of the game?
Yeah, none of that, the intimidation factor, none of that bothers me. Especially we fight all different kinds of body types, and a lot of the times the unassuming ones are usually the stronger ones. So, I'm not ever the one that's going to try to get in your head or intimidate you, but I like an intense stare off, and I like to size up at weigh-ins and stuff like that. So, and it's going to be awesome doing that in Australia against Ronnie.
That's actually how I do that's how I do my bet, the fighter picks. I'll watch the weigh-in. Like the weigh-ins are one of my favorites to once again go back to that nonverbal communication to see where the eyes are, the hands are, if the guy's having a rough cut. You can kind of see it in that.
Oh, yeah.
How much you're fighting at bantamweight, and Yahya used to fight at 145 feather. Recently in recent years he's fighting there at bantamweight as well. Are you cutting a lot? What do you walk at?
Once I got signed to UFC, I made like a rule for myself that I couldn't get over 160 because I could definitely walk around mid high 60s, and that I think the fight for Contender Series was a pretty rough cut. So that's when I was like, all right, we got to keep the weight low. So I generally walk mid to high 50s, and then but once the fight gets closer, like I'll be low 50s, high 40s, so the cut's not too bad.
How are you controlling? Are you in charge of any sort of the strength and conditioning, the nutrition, kind of like the people around you, your camp, who you rely on to guide you in the right way? As you get older and mature as a fighter, I introduced you earlier as a perennial title contender. So as you mature, are you seeing yourself making more of the decisions, and maybe share with us some of those processes leading up to a fight?
Well, I definitely I have a strength and conditioning coach, nutritionist, and then my boxer. I have all the coaches, and I set up the private lessons, and I've always stayed on top of that. Ever since I was an amateur, I felt like that was the way I wanted to do it. Uh, but no, I have a head coach, Fabiano Scherner, and Ian Loveland. He was in the UFC at one point. He's been training me since I was an amateur as well. So usually we'll all kind of like navigate together. And all right, if they think I need like to take a practice off, we'll all communicate and stuff like that. So I feel like we have it. I mean, at this point, like I said, I feel like you have to be prepared, and everything you do has to be for a purpose.
Are you tracking any sort of are you wearing any like wearables, devices? Are you tracking your heart rate, any of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I use the Polar heart rate, the Polar Global, a heart rate monitor. It's a
Yep.
sternum strap. I use that for my strength and conditioning workouts, and we monitor my drops within a minute, how much I'm able to recover in a minute. So my coach, I will push it for like a 5 minute round, then we'll rest for a minute, stuff like that. So we like to see we really want to be able to have like a full recovery in a minute in between rounds, right?
Mm.
So that's something that we definitely like to play around with, and we have been for like the last year and a half.
Yeah, and how about the sparring? I mean, you're getting close. I think we're less than a month away from watching you fight here. How's that tapering down? And then are you doing any? Is it the exact same way you've been doing it? Like we'll say 2-3 years ago.
Well, this last I would say the last like year and a half, I've been splitting my camps between here and I live in Vancouver, Washington, but I train in Portland. But from here and in Hawaii, I train with Hawaii Elite as well.
So is that where you're from?
No, I'm from Washington State.
But your blood, how about your ethnicity? Like, where do your like ancestral DNA come from?
Well, my dad's from Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, my mom's from here. Yeah.
Okay.
So my mom, I think her side is like Indian and German, and my dad's is Mexican.
Okay. With that being said, those sort of because I grew up boxing, my hometown, it's in Ohio, Youngstown. So we've had one of my childhood friends was a middleweight champ, Kelly Pavlik, Boom Boom Mancini, and they always in the boxing realm, in the world of boxing, they always talk about that Mexican style fighter. The endurance is through the roof, the cardio never disappears, and he cuts the ring in half. He puts you in the corner, and he forces you to, either defend or wilt. So coming up, who were your guys that you watched, whether they were mixed martial artists or any sort of combat athletes? Who'd you look up to?
Well, one of the first, like I would say, Mexican MMA fighters I started looking up to was Diego Sanchez.
Oh yeah,
like that was someone I like. From our background, he had like that. I don't know. He had like this crazy mentality, and I felt like I kind of related to it. So he was definitely someone I watched fight, and yeah, he's always been a blast. Crazy, he's still fighting. He has a fight coming up.
He's a vampire, dude.
Yeah, right.
Diego Sanchez. So, people always say, looking back, what advice would you give to your younger self? I'm going to do the opposite. What does the 30-year-old Ricky Simon look like? What is he doing, and what's his life like?
I mean, I feel like I have everything, together, like as far as training and everything. I think I would just like at that point, I better own, a big house or something. So I better, I just want to make sure I have, living the professional athlete life. Things can, go crazy a little bit if with, you make this bonus, and it just with everything like financially and everything. I just want to make sure I do everything right, since this has been a big year for me, and I'm planning for another big year. So, so 30-year-old Ricky is financially stable and responsible.
Attaboy, man. It's one thing thinking it, you got to believe it. And, people even say you got to know what it smells like. You got to know what it tastes like, that law, the manifest. So how about the kid who, when you got that one lone loss, and metaphorically, all the fighters out there who are young, they just lost, and now they're second guessing, is this the right career move? Should I even get back out there? What advice would you have for them?
Well, that went through my head as well, and that's a battle that you're gonna have with yourself, especially after losses. So as long as you keep training, like if I didn't keep training and get that confidence back, then it never would have happened for me. So you got to get back in the gym and just keep working at it, and if it's gonna happen, it'll happen. If you put in the work, it should happen. And I've always been a firm believer in that.
Ricky Simon, man, I appreciate you sharing space with me here. Before I let you go, man, leave us with something. How's February 9th going to look like and what are you planning to give the fans?
Yeah, I really feel like February 9th is my coming out party. I haven't had a chance to really feel comfortable in there yet, and I feel like I'm gonna be able to show what I can really do. I'm gonna put the takedown defense on Rani Yahya, and I feel like I'm gonna knock him out.
My man. Hey, dude, I appreciate you doing this with me. Off the record, when I'm doing the marketing side of things, do you want me to just grab a photo of yours off of your Instagram to do that, or if you have one, how do you want me to do that?
Yeah, you could use any photo you want if you need me to send you one or
You got some good ones on your gram. I'll pull. I just had to ask you just for
okay.
yeah, make sure some guys have like photographers or I know the UFC's cracking down a lot with the copyright stuff, which is crazy.
Yeah, no, I'm always posting stuff too, so
Yeah.
I'm not in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my buddies is the S&C coach at American Top Team, and he got like Instagram banned him for like 2 weeks. It was crazy.
Oh man.
Yeah. Hey, well, you're a fighter. Hopefully they don't do that to you. Hey, man, hopefully everything goes well with the cut, with the travel, and I'm looking forward to watching you fight, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this will be out later next week, and I'll send you the first copy, all right?
All right, sounds
All
good.
right, brother. Have a
All
good
right.
one.
Yep.